Okay, I'm back, Biffy.
This is Education Matters with Ohio Education Association President Scott Tomorrow.
I've spent my career teaching students about our country's history, the good and the bad of it. In turn, I've learned how ready our students really are to have tough conversations. When we give them the opportunity to have an honest education, they thrive. Let's empower our kids to be critical thinkers today and strong leaders tomorrow.
Education Matters, brought to you by the Ohio Education Association.
Now is the time to explore Toyota's wide range of all-wheel and four-wheel drive vehicles. Like the brand new Corolla Cross with available all-wheel drive and more cargo room than ever. Or go off-road in a rugged new 4Runner. Visit your Toyota dealer today. Or go online to buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals. Hurry, offers end February 28th. Toyota, let's go places.
Jefferson Starship comes to the Capitol Theater for one night only, Saturday, March 5th. See the legendary band on their Mother of the Sun tour as they play all your favorites. Their iconic songs never sounded so good. Jefferson Starship, March 5th at the Capitol Theater. For tickets, call 304-233-7000 or visit capitoltheaterwheeling.com.
Over the years, you've brought opioids into your home. They helped when you were in pain, and you held on to them just in case. But holding on to opioids puts your family at risk. Learn more at www.fda.gov/drug disposal.
The best in live and local talk returns momentarily on The Watchdog.
Hello, everyone. From The Watchdog, I am the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster, with a look at your local weather forecast for your Thursday. Look for mostly cloudy skies, a couple of rain showers around. Still a mild day with a high near 60 degrees. Rather windy through the day and the evening and the overnight, with temperatures down to about 26 for the low. Maybe a wintry mix in some locations. Otherwise, just a few raindrops, becoming mostly cloudy for your Friday, with highs just above freezing. Have yourself a great day, everyone. From The Watchdog, I'm the Storm Tracker, Darnell Foster.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of this station or its sponsors.
Live from the Robinson Auto Group studios, this is the Valley's longest-running morning show, the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe from WKKX and WVLY.
It's 58 degrees, 58 warm degrees at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport, 55 here at my home studios in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling, and we're looking at 57 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. Cloudy with a little bit of light rain coming down in some parts of the Ohio Valley. We are going to see the rain begin this morning. Will pick up throughout the day, get heavy in the afternoon. Could see 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain, maybe a little bit more depending on where you are. Going to have to watch out for flooding a little bit during the day today. It's a spring-like day in both the good and the bad way. Nice, warm, but rainy spring-like day today. It's 8:10, 10 minutes after the hour here on the Watchdog Morning Show. I want to remind you, if you want to watch our video feed these days, the best way to watch the video feed is by going to our website, watchdognetwork.com, and the video feed resides there. I've explained before, we're having a little little trouble with Facebook. Facebook is not being kind to us for reasons that we don't know, because you cannot talk to any human beings at Facebook and say, what the hell are you doing to us? So we do put our Facebook live feed up on Facebook, on our Watchdog page, and on my page, but a lot of times Facebook is not letting you see it. So, simplest way to watch the video feed of the show every day is to go to watchdognetwork.com and to check out the video feed. It resides there, and you'll find it as you like it. I was talking at the beginning of the show about a new study that was done the study was done in Canada about, quote, cluttered minds. And apparently something that I think a lot of us have always kind of thought is actually true. Your brain can get full. Your brain can take so much information, and then it's like, I can't take anymore. You want to give me a new phone number? I got to get rid of an old phone number, that kind of thing. You want to meet a new person? I got to put somebody else out of my head. Apparently, that is actually true. The brain can get full. I've often joked about that, and I guess it's true. Off the text line from Bill, this is actually a good point. He says, Howard, wouldn't it be a cool thing if you could hit reset when you retire and flush out all the things related to your work that you don't need anymore to make room for new information? I like that. That would be great, wouldn't it? Just push the button and it all flushes out. As it is, apparently, there is the brain does it itself. At some point, the brain says, can't take anything else in. You got to get rid of something. Monroe, you got to get rid of something. Throw something out. Take something out through the trash. So, interesting story. Shared it with you earlier this morning. You can find it online. Maybe I'll post a little link to it a bit later on today. Coming up in a bit, we'll talk about the COVID. I got some COVID numbers for you. They're on the way down. That's good. Mask mandates are beginning to fade away. Should they fade away just yet? We'll talk about some thoughts on that. Off our text line again at 304-214-1600. The CDC, Howard, will be ending the mask mandate for everyone soon, and yes, I do believe that is likely to be true. We've got all of that coming up in COVID conversations in just a bit. Right now, though, we're going to have capital conversations as we continue our daily update on what's going on down in Charleston under the Golden Dome. The legislature continues. Well, I guess if I wanted to be my usual political self, I would say the GOP supermajority-controlled legislature continues its attack on average West Virginians. But let me just say, they're still working down there, which is a dangerous thing. Here's the Morning Capital Report.
This is the Metro News Capital Report.
Your appointments for dog grooming, doggy daycare, and dog boarding today.
For all of your IT needs, visit OmniPerforms.com. Omni Strategic Technologies, the only IT company that the watchdog trusts.
Who are the toughest men and women in the Ohio Valley? It's the 41st Annual Budweiser Tough Man Contest, co-sponsored by WTOV9, Wheeling, Ohio County CVB, Thomas Auto Centers, The World Gym, Jill's Gentlemen's Club, A Class Act, and ICR Equipment Rental Sales and Supply. Coming this Friday and Saturday night to Wheeling's West Banco Arena. See up to 100 men and women slug it out for thousands in prize money. Tickets are on sale at the West Banco Arena box office or online at westbancoarena.com. Or to charge tickets by phone, call 800-514-3849. It's the 41st Annual Budweiser Tough Man Contest, coming this Friday and Saturday night to Wheeling's West Banco Arena. Gates open at 6 and the excitement begins at 7. And if you're planning to stay in Wheeling this weekend, the Wheeling, Ohio County CVB is offering special hotel rates for Tough Man fighters, ring girls, and fans. For details, go to WBToughman.com.
Introducing our new redesigned 7 News app. Our new app features a sleek, modern design, an easy-to-navigate home screen with quick access to local news content and a localized weather forecast. Subscribing to notifications is easier, and with one tap, you have access to recent push notifications. There are more ways to watch and find video. To get the new WTRF 7 News app, just update the latest version or download the WTRF 7 News app in your Apple or Google Play Store by searching WTRF.
You're never too far from the most local programming in the Ohio Valley. Find us here. AM 1600 and 1370. FM 98.1 and 97.7. We are the Watchdog. The Watchdog.
Great conversation continues now on the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
58 degrees, Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. 55 here at my home studios in the Elm Grove section of Wheeling. 57 degrees at the Robinson Auto Group Studios downtown Wheeling in the heart of the Ohio Valley. A little bit of light rain around the upper Ohio Valley. We will see rain throughout the morning. Heavier rain coming in this afternoon and this evening. Inch and a half, maybe a bit more of rain throughout the day. Flooding is likely to be a concern in some areas. Keep an eye on that. Watch the creeks and streams. We will do the same and pass information along to you as well. The ground is already saturated from the snow melt, and lots of rainfall coming down on top of that could create some trouble. So I guess it's a spring-like day, though. High today, predicted of 60. It's 58 right now, and 60 and rainy and breezy. That's a spring-like day. 8:21 on the Watchdog Morning Show. We've been following the legislative action down in Charleston quite a good bit. Lots of guests, lots of conversation about it. And certainly it has been clear there have been a lot of bills having to do with education. Bills that the GOP supermajority have been running that would try to take as much control away from local school boards as possible. The legislature wants to consolidate the control of schools in their own body, even taking it away from the state school board, giving the legislature more power to mandate how things are going to go in schools. The legislature wants to have a statewide policy on masks, ignore local options. They're revising the annual leave for teachers, making it less desirable of a policy for teachers to have. This is just a handful of what's been done. And of course, the big one that we've talked about almost every day from all different perspectives is HB 4011, what the legislative leaders are calling the anti-stereotype bill, or a transparency bill. It's a bill that is, in my mind, stealthily aimed at critical race theory. And I say in my mind, it's not just in my mind, most folks see it that way. The GOP-controlled legislature didn't want to actively go out and attack critical race theory again because they were kind of losing that argument a little bit So they have come up with this new thing, anti-transparency. All policies need to be posted online, lesson plans, personnel actions having to do with race, ethnicity, et cetera, all have to be posted online. Teachers are not supposed to be pushing any agenda as far as race, ethnicity, and so on. And there's even, I don't think it's going to pass, but there's even a bill pending to create a snitch line in the governor's office so people could call the governor's office and go, I think old Mr. Monroe, I think he talked about slavery in his classroom, and that's bad news. A snitch line to report people who are teaching, well, history. We are seeing this here in West Virginia. What's a little bit scary is this is not a single state issue. We are seeing these kinds of things happening all across the country. And I invited our political analyst, a former campaign consultant, former congressional staffer, current podcaster and talk host, Matt Robeson, to join me. Matt, good morning. Welcome to the show. These education-related policies are happening all across the country, are they not?
They are. They are. And I'm looking forward to calls into the snitch line saying Mr. Monroe is talking about slavery while smoking his government-issued crack pipe.
I want to be clear. I don't think that snitch line bill is going to pass. But you know what? I've reached the point with this legislature in West Virginia. I don't know. Maybe the snitch line will pass, but
well, that's so well for everywhere that they've tried it. You know, it's gotten flooded with crank calls, having a good time. So by all means, go for it.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, because the governor's office and then following up in the governor's office, school systems have plenty of time to track down stupid snitch reports. But this is, when this first popped up in West Virginia, and I love the clever names that our legislature is able to use. They call this one the anti-transparency, or the anti-stereotype bill, the anti-stereotype bill. Who could be opposed to being opposed to stereotypes, right? I mean, it's a bill that sounds good. But it is being done in a lot of other places. I guess, Matt, because folks were beginning to catch on to the fact that critical race theory almost was a manufactured issue.
Right. In ancient Jerusalem, what used to happen is once a year, the priests would get two goats, and one goat would be sacrificed to God, and the other goat would symbolically have all of the sins and misdeeds of the community cast upon it, and then the goat would be sent out into the wilderness. Well, when medieval scholars read about this and translated from the ancient Aramaic or Hebrew, they translated it as that second goat was the scapegoat. So that's where we get our word scapegoat, which all goes to show that the practice of scapegoating is literally thousands of years old and goes to the roots of Western culture and civilization. And lo and behold, it is back in full force in American politics in 2022. We are seeing a basic case of scapegoating. Now, it's a little bit like the movie A Few Good Men. One of the great scenes in A Few Good Men is Tom Cruise explaining that in a trial, you're not deciding guilt versus innocence. Something bad has happened. And what the lawyers for each side are doing is they're trying to give the jury someone to blame. So something very bad has happened in America. We've had the COVID pandemic, and particularly in schools. Where do people feel it most acutely? Well, they feel it most acutely in the things we care the most about, our children. Of course we do. And so something bad has happened to our children. And what you've seen over the last year or so is both parties trying to find a scapegoat and give the jury, the American people, someone to blame. The Republicans have put forward critical race theory, school closures, and mask mandates. The Democrats have put forward Donald Trump, and to some extent, the Republican Party writ large for their inability to get serious about COVID. And for the first year or so of the pandemic, a year plus, the Democrats were winning on that. But then then, as memories began to fade of Donald Trump's initial fumbling of the pandemic, his disastrous performance, and as people began to get tired of all of this, and as the suffering of kids began to feel more and more acute, people's feelings changed, and now the scapegoat coming from the Republican side felt a lot more salient. So that's my story for what's going on here.
And it culminates in across the country, and we've seen it here in West Virginia, even in our local area. It culminates in these angry, bitter, aggressive, close to violent, sometimes actually violent, school board meetings, where parents come and pound the table and scream that you're doing bad things to my kids. And I mean, school board meetings have become a flashpoint across the country for the anger. Your description is a good one. Somebody's got to be at fault. It's got to be the school system. Let's yell at them. And boy, have we been yelling at our school systems.
Absolutely. And what's so interesting, if you dig into polling and focus grouping about this, is there's a lot of evidence that people are just generally unhappy. They really are looking for someone to blame. And if you drag the specifics in front of them, they don't. It's an ineffable sense that something is bad. They don't like it. They are looking for something to blame, but they don't really attach blame to the specific charges that the Republicans are putting forward. So in a CBS News poll released just this week, the polling found that almost 60% of parents of school-age children still believe that schools should require masks. So it's not a mask mandate thing. And it's not CRT. We know that. So even in the midterm elections, when CNN did polling after that, it's true that education had risen to a top concern for 80% of respondents. But only about 25% of them said that the content of the curriculum, the CRT type stuff, was their major educational concern. That's not what's top of mind. And I featured on my Beyond Politics podcast and radio show some researchers who looked very closely at this in the Virginia gubernatorial election and did some focus grouping. And what you found is that these parents who they talked to who had flipped over and voted for Glenn Youngkin, what they were basically saying is they didn't know what CRT was. They didn't really care about that. They were angry because they felt that schools had been closed for too long, and they were just generally upset that it seemed like school boards were not responsive to how much anguish they were feeling. So it's a very generalized thing, but yes, you were right. It's coming out in the form of a lot of anger at school boards and at schools and administrators and to some extent teachers for this collective sense that our kids have all suffered.
CRT, critical race theory, came in like a bang a year ago. I lose track of time, but it seemed like a really good tool for the right wing to use. Critical race theory somehow was teaching our kids that they were inferior and that racism was a systemic problem in our society, and we don't want to hear that. And but as I think, Matt, as there was pushback on that, as the public became more aware of critical race theory, began to realize that actual critical race theory isn't taught in any public schools at a lower grade anywhere, and when it became more clear that critical race theory had sort of become a buzz phrase for teaching about slavery and teaching about racism in our society, I think a lot of folks began to push back against that, which is why I think the Republican leadership across the country, certainly here in West Virginia, kind of shifted their game plan a little bit. They stopped really going after directly critical race theory, and they begun these things like, just don't talk about divisive subjects, but make sure that people put divisive, if they're going to talk about divisive subject, you must put it online. Parents need to know divisive conversations are going to occur. and that way parents will have a way to respond. So I think this has been a bit of a diversion from CRT, because the truth of the matter was CRT wasn't holding up the way I think some of the original GOP leaders wanted it to be.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the original CRT panic was largely the work of one man, a guy named Christopher Rufo, who is a researcher.
Yep.
He works for the Manhattan Institute. And look, full disclosure, I have featured researchers from the Manhattan Institute on my Great Ideas podcast. Why? Because a lot of them are legitimate, bona fide thinkers. They're conservative, but they have a reasonable conservative outlook on various government issues that I think deserves to be discussed. Chris Rufo has put forward, he's done a lot of research, and he's put forward kind of a vision of what's happening in schools. That's exactly what you described, Howard, exactly. And, you know, the right got very ginned up about that. And then I think you paint it perfectly. I think there was a realization that they were getting out a little bit ahead of where people were. They weren't capturing the public mood quite right, because when you poll people, when you focus group people, when you talk to real human beings, what they say is, I'm not that fussed about the idea that we should teach the reality of slavery. Or they really didn't understand what CRT was. And it reminds me a little bit of the push years ago to teach evolution in the schools versus teaching the biblical vision of how human beings were created, how the world was created. And what the conservative side found is, well, people aren't really up for the full-scale Bible version. And so that became kind of the soft version, intelligent design. That seems reasonable. It reminds me of just what you were saying a moment ago. It's like the anti-stereotyping. Oh, who's for stereotyping? So I do think that they've kind of found their way to a softer version of this that just captures people's generalized anxiety about what's going on in schools. But I will say one final thing. I mean, just because this is to some extent what politicos call an astroturf campaign, right? It's not like real grassroots. It's fake. It's astroturf. There is definitely an astroturf element to this. But it doesn't mean that Republicans aren't on to something, too. You saw it in what happened in the school board in San Francisco this week. The school board there was a recall election, and the three members of the school board were recalled. Well, why? Because parents thought that these folks had been dithering about crazy woke progressive issues like, should we rename the schools that have been named for Dianne Feinstein and Abraham Lincoln, because maybe those are insufficiently woke names, and maybe we can't put a gay white father on a volunteer parent board because that's not sufficient diversity. And they're fussing about all of these things, and they're not paying attention to how do we get the kids back in school? How do we get them learning? What do we do about learning loss? And people were tired of it. And that, I think, really is the crux of what's going on here, because parents are legitimately concerned and angry that school administrators have lost sight. They've lost the thread. They've lost the narrative. And in general, what you see in focus grouping and polling, again, if people want to go back in the Beyond Politics podcast feed, I featured Eliza Astro, a researcher at the think tank Third Way, who conducted a lot of this research. What they say is the Democratic Party overall has gotten a little bit hyper-focused on social issues, and they've lost sight of kind of the bread and butter concerns that real people have. And they've done it with a tone that's pretty insulting to people. And you can't beat deplorables by being insufferable. And all too often, that's the trap that Democrats have fallen into.
I would argue that both sides have gotten too distracted with these values issues or these side issues. But I would agree with you, the Republican leadership in places where they have strong numbers have the upper hand because Democrats have sort of overplayed their hand. That we want to tussle around with some of these, I hate to use that phrase woke, but want to tussle around with some of these woke issues instead of dealing with the concrete issues. I don't think Republicans do it any better. I don't think these anti-transparency bills or anti-stereotype bills, this transparency bill, does any more to improve education than does changing the name of schools, but changing the name of schools or other woke discussions give the right wing something to attack. And, sort of common sense people go, yeah, I get that. I get that. Why aren't we focusing more on, reading, writing, arithmetic, or whatever you want to call it? I also take note, as you pointed out, Chris Rufo, who was sort of the mastermind of the CRT, has now come out with this transparency concept, and he's been very clear. I mean, he's written about it. He's been very clear that since the CRT didn't take hold with the public, what these anti-stereotype bills or transparency bills are designed to do is to seem so benign. Why, who could be opposed to putting your lesson plans online? How could you be opposed to that? They seem so benign that when Democrats or the other side, whatever you're going to call the other side, want to fight against it, want to go, oh no, this is bad, it makes them look foolish because it's like, what, you're opposed to transparency? And that's part of the game plan. Rufo's written about it. That's the game plan, is to put Democrats in a position where they seem to be defending or fighting against something simple, something that most people would say, yeah, okay, sure, what's wrong with that? And it requires a little extra level of thinking, I guess, Matt, to get to the answer to the question, what's wrong with that?
Well, folks, this is why Howard Monroe is a pro in politics, because I totally agree with you, and you've just put your finger, you have stated in slightly different and maybe better terms a key principle of politics and communication. I mean, for the simple way of saying it is, if you're explaining, you're losing, right? And so for Democrats, they have gotten cornered into a position of trying to explain something super complex in simple terms, and Republicans have the upper hand because they have the simpler argument, right? Transparency, and some control for parents. That sounds awfully good. I'm a Democrat, and I agree with those ideas. But the other piece of it that you're bringing across here is, Chris Matthews, before he was the host of Hardball and got himself into some trouble, wrote a book called Hardball, which is the best practical guide to politics that I've ever read. It was assigned reading in grad school for me. And one of his chapters is called Always Concede on Principle. Always concede on principle. So Democrats have been put in the position where reflexively, because we like to reason things out, and I often say that Democrat is an ancient Greek word that means repeats facts smugly. We feel like we need to win every argument on the logic and the facts, and we're pretty smug about it. We feel like we need to defend, this is what critical race theory is. We need to explain it to people. No, we should concede on principle. We should say, oh, yeah, we're against that too. That's terrible. Yeah, no CRT. All right, we all agree. No one knows what it is, but we are on the same page. We don't want to do that. We want to do, let's and then we can say what we're for. Right. Do some jujitsu. Don't get into these traps that get laid for us, where we end up arguing side issues and minutia, and then what happens? People glaze over on that. It just goes right over their head, and they're like, wait, why are we arguing about this? I don't care. I just want to know, is my kid going to school next week, and are you teaching them how to read?
Exactly. Talking to Matt Robeson, one of our political consultants here on the Watchdog Morning Show. Matt, do you have an extra minute or two? I need to do a news break. I'm behind time.
For you always.
Biff is yelling at me in my ear going, come on, get the break in here. We're running late. I don't know if your producer does that, but he cracks my whip a few times. So I'm going to do a news break and check the Mountaineer Report, Tony Caridi. And I just want to shift gears for a minute or two when we come back. I want to talk about Donald Trump for a second. Is Trump's power waning, or is it growing? Is he becoming less important? Is he becoming more of a leader of the party? I just would like your take on that, and we'll talk about it when we come back here. On the Watchdog Morning Show, it's 18 to the hour. Tony's got the Morning Mountaineer Report. But first, we check some headlines from our friends at WTRF TV.
Now it's time for your local news headlines from 7 News at WTRF, My Ohio Valley, and ABC Ohio Valley. Only on AM 1600 WKKX. The Watchdog.
Good Thursday morning, Ohio Valley. I'm Stephen Ruffin with your 7 News headlines. Fire crews responded to a house fire on Wheeling Island last night. Wheeling Public Information Officer Philip Stahl tells 7 News the fire was located at 118 North Front Street on the island. When crews arrived on scene, they found heavy smoke and fire coming from the basement. They were able to extinguish the flames quickly. The home's occupants were able to escape and no firefighters sustained injuries. The Wheeling Fire Department is investigating, but no cause is known at this time. Reactions continue to pour in after it was announced the Coke plant in Fallons Beach will close permanently on March 31st. Brooke County commissioners say their hearts go out to those 288 employees from the plant who have worked there for many years and dedicated their lives to it. Losing tax dollars is another big concern. When the plant closes, the loss is said to be about $2 million. They'll have a ripple effect on funding for the Board of Education and the county government. Commissioner Tim Ennis says this closure will be felt throughout the county. The impact of this plant closing is hitting close to home for many West Virginians, including Congressman David McKinley. He says he's not happy about it at all. The congressman isn't just fearing for the 300 plant employees, but for those who supply fuel, maintenance equipment, and the machine shops that keep operations running. That was a look at your headlines. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Breaking down the numbers as far as the Mountaineers and the Jayhawks go. Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Caridi. That story coming up on today's Mountaineer Report is brought to us by Kroger, the official grocer of WVU Athletics.
At Kroger, fresh groceries are our thing. So we do freshness checks on the items in your delivery order at every step of their journey from our farms to our stores. And pick and pack every blue, raz, and strawberry in your free pickup order with the utmost care. Because we believe in treating your food the same way we'd want ours to be treated. It's the golden rule, only for like fresh fruit and stuff. Order now using the mobile app. We're fresh every day, so shop anyway. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Free pickup on orders of $35 or more. Restrictions may apply. 42 million Americans struggle with hunger, yet 35% of the food in this country is wasted. Those aren't just numbers. They're our neighbors, your daughter's friend from school, the family of 4 next door. The Kroger Company's Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation is committed to making fresh food accessible to all by ensuring it never goes to waste. Together, we can help end hunger. Learn more at zerohunger.zerowastefoundation.org.
That light that you see glimmering at the end of the tunnel is the light at the end of the Big 12 Conference regular season basketball tunnel. Yes, don't look now, but only 6 games remain in conference play for West Virginia. The action will resume on Saturday night when the Mountaineers host Kansas in a sold-out game at the Coliseum. What is it that Kansas does so well that has them right now in first place in the league? Well, offensively, they're just extremely good. Their effective field goal percentage, number 1 in league play. They are number 2 in the conference in 2-point shooting percentage, number 3 in 3-point shooting percentage, and when they do, in fact, miss shots, they go get the rebound. They're number 2 in offensive rebounding percentage. On the other side, for West Virginia, the Mountaineers find themselves toward the bottom in a lot of those categories. Offensively, WVU has struggled in league play. They are 7th in overall efficiency on offense. They are dead last in effective field goal percentage at 44%. Also, dead last, number 10 out of the 10 schools in 2-point shooting percentage. It comes in at just 41%. A lot of things that have to get fixed in a hurry if the Mountaineers, in fact, are looking at a postseason berth. Join us tonight coming up at 7 o'clock from Kegler's Sports Bar. It's time for another episode of the Bob Huggins Show, and we invite you to join us from 7 until 9. That is today's Mountaineer Report. It's brought to us by Kroger, the official grocer of WVU Athletics. I'm Tony Caridi on the Mountaineer Sports Network from Learfield.
Now is the time to explore Toyota's wide range of all-wheel and four-wheel drive vehicles. Like the brand new Corolla Cross with available all-wheel drive and more cargo room than ever. Or go off-road in a rugged new 4Runner. Visit your Toyota dealer today. Or go online to buyatoyota.com, the official website for deals. Hurry, offers end February 28th. Toyota, let's go places.
Sports Map Radio is on all night long. Tune in to get up to the minute sports coverage on FM 98.1, AM 1600. We are the Watchdog.
He has his say. You can have yours. Text us or call us and join the conversation. This is the Watchdog Morning Show with Howard Monroe.
Well, some COVID conversations coming up in the next hour of the show. Going to talk a bit about mask mandates. Is it time to get rid of them? What's the CDC likely to say about that? I think some new stuff could come out today. Clay Marsh, the COVID czar in West Virginia, has been suggesting that we may be passing from a pandemic soon into an endemic. We'll talk about that. COVID conversations coming up. Plus, it is so West Virginia politics. Evan Jenkins, a former legislator, and then a congressman, then appointed to the state Supreme Court, then elected for a term, resigns 2 weeks ago from the state Supreme Court, shows up yesterday as a lobbyist in Charleston. Meantime, the legislature is changing the rules on his replacement, and instead of going straight to an election this fall, they're going to let the governor's appointment stand for another 2 years. My friends, it is West Virginia politics at its finest. Got all of that coming up a little bit later on. Right now, I'm talking to one of our political consultants and analysts, Matt Robeson. He is a former congressional campaigner, former congressional staffer, former campaign consultant, and a podcaster. Let's talk about that real quick, Matt, before I forget at the end of the show. You have several podcasts. You've alluded to those, but let's remind the listeners where they can find you when you're not here with me.
Sure. Beyond Politics is the main podcast that I think would appeal to most of your listeners. We have great guests. We just had Joyce Vance, the legal analyst from MSNBC. We featured Donald McNeil, the former lead COVID reporter from the New York Times. We have a lot of interesting people. What we try and do is offer a little bit of an antidote to what you hear on a lot of radio and even podcasts, which is a lot of uninformed yelling. And we try and bring a slightly more intelligent, thoughtful, but still entertaining and interesting vibe to what we do. So that's Beyond Politics. And then I mentioned earlier, we do the Great Ideas podcast. And that one features what people say they want, which is some reasoned discussion of ideas. And we do it with a twist toward the positive. We try and focus on ideas for making things better, for fixing problems. And we get ideas from conservatives and liberals and moderates and everyone across the ideological spectrum. And we invite on real experts and interesting people who have thoughtful, reasoned, evidence-based ideas. So Great Ideas, Beyond Politics. Look, if you're listening in New Hampshire, you can also check out Capital Close-Up, which is a New Hampshire-based podcast. But those are the main shows.
And you do some writing. You write for Newsweek occasionally, a little column there. Also for the editorial board. Is that the name of the piece the place you write for occasionally?
That's right. The editorial board, which is a really interesting project of a longtime industry editor and writer. Newsweek. My writing also appears on Raw Story, Alternate, so people can Google it. I try to be same thing, reasoned but entertaining.
All right, let's talk about something I don't like to talk about a lot. I try to leave Donald Trump in the dust and forget about him, but he's out there. He is trying to continue to have some big influence. I guess he does. Where do you put Donald Trump's influence right now in the Republican Party? I saw a piece yesterday in Politico suggesting that his endorsements in the upcoming elections are losing some of their power. Trump-endorsed candidates aren't a guarantee lock anymore. Is he losing some of his strength in the party or not?
I think it's very yes is the short answer. Yes, in some ways. And you actually saw signs of this even going back to when he was still in office that his endorsement in primaries was becoming less and less effective. Republicans still act as if the Trump primary is the only game in town. They're not wrong about that, but the actual record of success in terms of being in a primary and being the Trump candidate is a lot more mixed than Republicans act like it is. So from that standpoint, yes, he is losing. But it's complicated. It's a nuanced thing. He's sort of become the ne'er-do-well brother in the family, sort of like the black sheep of the family. You have very complex emotions about him. He's kind of a deadbeat. He's gotten into some trouble with the law. You kind of love him. You feel very affectionate about him, from your time when you were young together. And, he can still make you laugh, and you still enjoy spending time with him. And you don't like it when other people attack him, but you're tired of answering for him. And, he's constantly coming up with get-rich-quick schemes, and, you're getting calls late at night. Anyway, I'm stretching this metaphor awfully far, but you see where I'm going with this. I mean, you see it in the reaction of Republicans like Senator John Thune, who's the third-ranking senator on the Republican side in the Senate, who, on the most recent revelations about Trump and records, and they basically end up, when reporters ask them about it, they're like, you can almost hear the sigh coming through in the quote, and they say, oh, well, I guess all of this has been reported. Let's not talk about that. I mean, they've begun to kind of wear their heart on their sleeve. They don't want to talk about it. And you see in polling that half of Republicans kind of want to give him the thank you so much, we love you, you were great, but we're ready for something new. He'd still probably be the strongest candidate in a Republican primary. He might even clear the field. Republicans might be afraid to run against him. But a lot of Republicans are wishing they could move on, and you see crystal clear in polling, they don't want to talk about relitigating the 2020 election anymore.
Except that's all that Donald Trump wants to talk about. Trump also has been tremendously successful in fundraising. He is... people ask me, why don't I unsubscribe? I'm on Trump mailing lists, and I get 7, 8 a day, from various Trump organizations, Save America, one in particular, but several of them, trying to ask for donations. And he is sucking up the money. And again, I was reading a piece yesterday. He's sucking up a lot of money that maybe traditionally would have gone more to the Republican National Committee or to other Republican PACs. He's just sucking up all of that cash.
Yeah, he's still obviously got the same hold on his followers that he always had. And there's not a lot that's going to shake that. And, I think we've actually talked about this topic before, even before he lost, that it was a big parlor game. I actually wrote an article about this, a year and a half ago, about whether Donald Trump would continue to exercise a hold on the Republican Party if and when he was out of office. And Republicans were split on this. And I think that's what you're seeing, is that it's a mixed bag. You can argue, yes, he still has a hammerlock on the Republican Party, and you can point to fundraising and how much people kowtow to him and how, they defer essentially to Donald Trump as the de facto leader of the party and how the press treats him that way. Or you can point to some of what I was citing before. One interesting thing, though, about what you just said is I can't let go of a personal hobby horse of mine, which is you get 7 or 8 emails a day, and you are outside the cult, right? So you don't soak all this stuff up. But imagine the psychological impact on people who are inside the cult or who get the emails and maybe are a little Trump skeptical at this point, but, they're still kind of on board with him. They're longstanding Republicans. Imagine the psychological impact of having this kind of messaging pumped into you day after day after day. People say, all this negative messaging. It doesn't matter. It's just fundraising rhetoric. It's the same content. It has the same effect as every other piece of marketing and advertising and propaganda that we're exposed to. And I think we really, really missed the boat on just how much of an effect all of this is having on our psyche. If we're wondering why people are so polarized and angry and negative, maybe we should take a look at how much fundraising, marketing material we're having pumped into us from all sources every day.
You know, during his campaign and in the early days of his presidency, there were a lot of people, probably myself included, who said, oh, the American public isn't going to buy this. My God, he's throwing out lies. He's so obviously, ridiculously overstating cases. Nobody's going to believe this or buy this. 4 years later, the American democracy was beginning to crumble because he had managed to destroy institutions, destroy faith in law and order, destroy faith in our electoral system, and so on. So, to suggest that, people will see through this, I'm not sure that's right. Matt, I got to run. Good talking to you as always, my friend. We'll do it again in the near future. Thank you for being with us today.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Matt Robeson, former campaign consultant, former congressional staffer, current podcaster, talk show host, and one of our contributing political analysts here on the Watchdog Morning Show. We'll talk COVID. We'll talk a little fun stuff, all coming up in the next hour. Right now, we'll talk the news with ABC. It's 9 o'clock.
The Watchdog is FM 98.1, AM 1600 WKKX Wheeling, FM 97.7, AM 1370 WVLY Moundsville.
From